But anyway, without further ado, welcome again to Defender Fridays, first episode of 2025. Hope everybody had a nice, relaxing time off, spent with family and friends, and doing all the things that we like to do when we're not staring at computer screens. Unless you're Maxime, then you probably still stared at computer screens on the holiday break. But so really excited to start this year off strong with a really good friend and colleague of mine, Matthew Bromiley. So for anybody that doesn't know Matt's got a, I mean, I'm sure most of you probably know Matt in some capacity, but Matt's got a pretty awesome background in this space. He's been doing this for a very long time. Matt was actually one of my mentors coming up. And Matt and I joined forces many years ago while we were both teaching for SANS. And he joined me and Whitney over on the OpenSOC project, which was a really good time. Had a lot of fun with that. And we've run many IRs together, teamed up on large scale threat hunts. We've been doing this game for a long time together. We've got a lot of fun stories and we've had a lot of good times. But Matt's got a really cool background. He's done some time over at Mandiant back before, or even during the transition into Google, and a lot of other really cool stuff. But Matt's with us actually now over at LimaCharlie doing great things here. So it's funny how our stories like refuse to separate, right, Matt? We just kind of keep interweaving.
Yeah, man. It's
But
the planetary unison. It just continues to just orbit. It doesn't end.
gravitational
So
forces and all that. Yeah,
that's
man.
right.
So what's on your mind, Matt? I mean, I know there's no shortage of cool things to talk about.
Oh my gosh. Well, first off, I want to echo the Happy New Year sentiment for everybody. I just want to yeah, I'm so glad to see like everybody here. Actually, the topic I wanted to talk today about, Eric, is a little bit of a ruse. I actually want to talk to you all about saving money on car insurance for the next 25 minutes. No, I'm just kidding. Thought I'd go that route, but it didn't happen. First off, Happy New Year. Hope everyone enjoyed it. The thing I wanted to come on and talk about, actually, yeah, I don't want to take any thunder from the real star of the show, but he's actually not with us right now, probably because he's busy dealing with this thing. But I woke up a couple of days. I want to say it was like maybe Christmas Eve or something. So full disclosure for everybody, I was traveling with my family during that time, and I was like glued to my phone, not because there was like some picture I was taking, but John Tuckner, who is a good friend of LimaCharlie, founder over at Secure Annex, formerly of Tynes, was kind of like live blogging, live sky. I don't know, blue skying. I don't know what the term is now because we can't say live tweeting anymore, and none of us X, like we X the X. But in any event, he was blue skying his way through like, hey, there's something going on here, over with Cyberhaven. And he was kind of talking. And now, to be fair for everybody here, I'm going to spend a lot of time giving Tuckner a lot of props just because I love what he's doing. John is building this company that is out to, I think, really secure the Chrome browser extension world. I'm just going to summarize it in that generalized term right there. And we got to see over the Christmas holidays just how vulnerable that world is. And it was kind of like, first off, awesome timing, John, number one, like suspicious timing almost, you know what I mean? But then number two, it was really cool because like I think a lot of folks had a security check. But Eric, there's like so many tangents I can pull out of this. So when you start by asking what's on my mind, the first thing is for anyone out there who's kind of in the defense side of things. I know this is Defender Fridays, but some of you might dip your toe in the red waters every now and then. But I like to just remind everyone, like, it is no accident that these threat actors chose a Christmas holiday to do this particular thing. No accident whatsoever. And I will mention that first and foremost to everyone out there. Like, I hate to say this. The holidays are like, there's no safe time for us. In fact, when we think it might be a safe time is usually when things like ramp up from a threat actor perspective. And if we do have anyone in the 62 participants here who had to work a shift over the holidays, overnight, daytime, or whatever, like huge thank you for you and everything that you do as well. But that's like my first takeaway is man, this actually happened. Let's talk about the actual attack though and what occurred. So I'm going to drop a link in here. There's been a lot of different summary posts that have been out, and there's a lot of stuff that where folks have kind of been talking about it and what's been happening. This is the one that I think does a good job of really summarizing what's happened over the time, and they've actually got some really good quotes from John in there as well. And in any event, wait, that's not the one with quotes, but nonetheless, one of them is. But that being said, so here's what happened. A spearfishing campaign came into Cyberhaven and essentially was meant to look like your Chrome extension is going to expire if you don't perform these updates. That spearfish ultimately led to an OAuth compromise that allowed the adversaries to essentially have publishing rights to the Chrome extension that was out there. For anyone who's kind of unaware of what this is, this spearfish came into Cyberhaven on the 24th. And like I cannot stress enough how much that timing was intended. Like I almost guarantee the adversaries were sitting on it for a while and we're just waiting, right? Because let's look at it from the opposite. The opposite that did not happen is it's not like they got OAuth access and then someone was like, "Oh, dude, go code up a malicious extension really quick." This guy actually bit the lure, right? The opposite way around. Everything was staged and ready to go.
They were sitting on it, man.
Just waiting for it to happen, locked and
And they,
loaded.
and they also know that on these dates, right, before, during, immediately after a holiday, your sysadmins, your developers, even your security people, like they're on watch, but they don't want to be, right? Like it's okay, what's this issue that I've got to sort out real quick so I can get back to playing unstable unicorns with my friends. Like and so it's they're half vigilant, right? If we're being honest.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Not only that, but it might not even be, and let me be clear. Eric and I are talking like in generalized terms here. So I don't want anyone to take offense to this, but it might not even be, Eric, like the A team or the B team that gets this. You know what I mean? And like I'm being very just frank when I'm saying like a lot of times like your senior developers or the folks that might just have that inkling or an eye for it, they took off a week ago. Like they're out somewhere else. So the person checking that email might not even be your most security conscious person. It might honestly be someone who's like, "Hey, buddy, hate to say it, but you're the freshman. You get the shift." And in that process, right, it's kind of like it's a little bit of like a least, I'm going to say the least resistance path or the weakest link in the chain. And the tough part there is it's not like I'm calling any person weak, but it's just such a vulnerable time period for so many reasons. You're likely dealing with a skeleton crew, you're likely dealing with a lower experienced crew, and you're likely dealing with a crew that is on vacation or is in the holidays. And of all times of the year, this is probably the one where phones and devices are most likely to be off. And I will admit that sometimes I know, right? It's like
Are what it sounds like what you're really trying to say is this is the intern's fault.
no, not at all. Only because I cannot confirm or deny that an intern was involved. However, if an intern was involved, then that intern needs to have a discussion. But that being said, oh, thank you, Leonard. That would be awesome. But let's unpack this more, right? Because we could sit and talk about the spearfish all day long, but where this got super interesting, in my opinion, oh, there he is. John Tuckner has joined the chat. Fantastic. All right, cool. John, I've been spending 11 minutes. Your ears must be on fire, sir. Must be on fire. But with that said, what's happened over this, and this is where I like bite. You know what I mean? Me personally, is I watch someone like John start to unravel and pull apart what's actually happening here. And this is where everyone needs to like pay attention, right? It's not the story here, in my opinion, is not, oh, this Cyberhaven company, whoever they are, got fished and then a malicious extension went out, right? It's picking on the little details and the metadata inside of these extensions and these libraries and being like, what else? What else, right? This is a typical investigative workflow for anyone out there who, and here's like my second takeaway, right? For anyone out there who might be newer to this field, this is like an investigative mindset 101. If you go and watch this, it's picking on little metadata points, little details that you see and being like, okay, these, 10 points together equal my one incident or my one threat actor. What if I take two away and I have 8? Where else do I see these commonalities? What if I take 2 more away and I have 6? What if I take 2 more away and I have 4? And you get to this like metadata style searching where you can start to unpack and say, what other things out there in the world have these similar characteristics? utilize these same libraries, might utilize this same code, might utilize these same domains, these same registrars. There's so many little IOCs to pick up on here. And now I can give John first person credit. I got to watch this unfold on Blue Sky and LinkedIn as John was going through this, because he was like, here's like a minute by minute annotated update of my investigative research. And what this has turned into is this massive, again, I think big defensive takeaway for everyone is like, watching that investigative process is how we should be attacking and approaching alerts like this, Eric, when they come in. And I'm generalizing the word alert, but this is how incidents unravel, right? This is how we do analysis. We take little bits of details and then zoom out. There's a proximity, a metadata search. What else is there? Oh, perfect. Look at this. I was actually, yeah.
We're sitting here talking about it. I might as well just show it. Yeah, this is on John's blog or Secure Annex's blog, but yeah, it's a very detailed timeline. This is almost the kind of timeline, actually it is the kind of timeline you would hope that the affected company would reveal and show. Some do, but it might be like 3 months after the attack, right? Where you're like, this is the real time updates that we kind of want during, so we kind of understand like what the impact is.
Yeah. And this is kind of what I wanted to actually, like, I don't want to duplicate, and obviously I can't take credit for anything John did, but I want to draw the defensive attention to what unfolded here. Because if you're an incident responder or you're a defender or a SOC analyst and you're like, I got an alert, how do I go through documenting a timeline? How do I go through explaining details? What types of language should I be using? I want you to take this post over at Secure Annex and use that as an example of like, here's how you bullet point and walk through an incident as it's unraveling. Here's the key metadata points that matter, recording timestamps, and then watching as they unravel and unfold. And like John, obviously huge props to you for this, but I'm turning this into a little bit of like an IR driven like lesson for everyone out there of, you can take the Chrome browser extension and swap it out with like ransomware incident, or swap it out with insider threat, or swap it out with anything else. That minute by minute approach of, here's what I found, here's what it means next, here's what I found, here's what it means next, and continue documenting and walking through it. That's like my real like starting fire for 2025, Eric, is we had this awesome play-by-play incident that occurred. We did not get our information from the company itself. They weren't quiet, right? There was some posting and CEO discussions and everything like that, but it was an investigator on the side pulling on bits of metadata, pulling on the analysis that they know of being like, okay, this looks similar. What's this? This looks similar. What's that? And correct me if I'm wrong now that we're here, but I think we're at dozens of impacted Chrome extensions have been identified. Dozens, right? And this is where it really unfolds, and it turns from a single company got phished into, yo, this is much larger than we might have thought. Because we're not now talking about Cyberhaven users. We're talking about folks who might have downloaded additional extensions. We're talking about folks who might have pulled a bunch of different things back, and the victim pool can potentially get larger. Number one. Number two, the like future impact, right, of who hasn't this reached yet is possible. But then, and here's like my other little thing, and then I'll pause, and I don't know, I don't want to say open it up for discussion because I'm not done yet. But the other thing is, there are a bunch of threat actors out there who probably didn't ever think about this path before. And now they see this path as possible. And they're like, huh, interesting.
Blazing a trail. Yeah.
Blazing a trail. Wow, look at that, you know? And I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see a magnifying glass on this type of thing. So the title of my talk today, thank you for coming to it, my TED Talk was, all I wanted for Christmas was secure browser extensions. And I picked this historical reference intentionally because I spent most of my holiday literally just kind of watching this thing unfold, thinking in my head, wow, every step of the way has been some piece of security advice somewhere. And I'm not going to say there was a fail anywhere, right? Like getting phished on Christmas Eve, that's a no-brainer. Like, oh, of course they target holidays. You can still fall victim to it. Securing your extensions, you know? Go ahead.
I got a question, and John, you might have some insights on this, but so in my experience in the past, when these Chrome extensions would get popped, it's usually as a result of the original developer selling off that extension, right? Selling it to some shadier party who decides to then retool it, repurpose it. But have I missed out on some things? Like, is there precedent for what's happened here, where it's a conventional supply chain attack, right? Like they compromised the developers of the extension. I mean, John, what's the over under on that?
I don't know if I've seen it. I had no idea like the permission, the OAuth permission to allow somebody else to push a new Chrome version. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. So
I
that
mean,
was pretty wild. And the fact that that doesn't fall into like Google Advanced Protection protected scopes is really interesting. So I mean, I have opinions on that, but like OAuth phishing is just absolutely nasty right now anyways for if you're able to get a application published and just direct people to something that policy check whatever people log in with click through 1Password and OAuth and so many other things that just kind of the user experience isn't set up to really identify or navigate this type of attack in some way.
Yeah, I think as the secondary person on this, Eric, the route that I've seen a lot, at least in some of the like things I've read or intel I've covered and stuff, has sometimes just been like masquerading as some legitimate extension, and then if enough people click it, like you're like, cool,
yeah.
like, hey, y'all wanted 1Password, you didn't know there was 1Password too, you know.
Yeah, yeah, which
Um,
which is a whole nother issue, right? Altogether. I mean, it's just like Hua, right? Somebody goes to File Hippo or wherever and downloads, YouTube video downloader. It's like, okay, whose fault is that? It's like, yeah, but 100% with you. Like the app stores, I think, need to do a good job of stopping the lookalikes and the masquerades and all that good stuff. But what really sucks though is when something that was completely legitimate becomes illegitimate, which, and I've been affected by this myself. And I blogged about it many years ago. Back in 2016, there was a browser extension that I used quite a bit. It let you modify the HTTP headers of your requests, right? Which I was using for some security stuff and testing and all that good stuff. And one day out of the blue, that extension started misbehaving, did some digging and found that it had been sold. Now, it didn't become malicious, but it became unwanted because it was injecting advertisements in every page that I went to, including LAN resources. So like I'd go to my Unified gear or my Synology NAS and there'd be an ad on the login page. But like it sucks because it's like, well, I didn't install a bad extension. I installed a good extension and it became bad,
mhm,
without my knowing. And that sucks that's even a pathway. Extensions are useful, they're powerful. Like, I don't think the right answer is, well, don't install extensions, right? But
mhm,
like, before folks like John came around and gave us automatable, scriptable ways to analyze these things, it was like rolling the dice.
mhm,
How do you do it? And orgs try to get their arms around it by putting in place like allow listings, so you can only install improved extensions. Okay, great. Now somebody's job is manually reviewing Chrome extensions and then deciding through some subjective, like, I guess this looks good. Well, sure, it looks good today. Is it
mhm.
gonna stay good, right? But anyway, that's
Yeah.
it.
No, and I think I think the other like takeaway, and this is kind of where the analysis expanded and became interesting, was with you again, like if you kind of pull on some of the metadata points, particularly I think some of the IP addresses associated with this, there was other Chrome extensions that got identified, and you get into other, I'm going to say like popular products. I'm going to say popular because I'm sure they have thousands of users. I don't know if they have millions, but whatever. But things like VPN City, and I'm just reading through the list over here, like VPN City, reader mode. It looks like there's a couple of non-English, and I don't mean anything by this, but non-English speaking extensions just based on the language and stuff like that. And interestingly enough, like where this also becomes a little tricky is like Cyberhaven gets the magnifying glass because of what type of company it is. But do the others get the same type of effect as well? Do the others get the same type of analysis or care and concern? I think it's really easy for like Cyberhaven to kind of hold the torch and be like, yeah, we secured our extension, we're good to go, we're good to go. But it's like, hold on, there's a threat actor out there with all these other compromised extensions that took advantage of all these other lesser known products. And I'm saying lesser known from a US perspective, everyone don't read into it too much, but like a lesser known extensions, did they get the same level of investigative treatment?
What's really interesting about that is there are some extensions that look like they're just hobbyists, but then there's also some other companies that got targeted in this. One by the name of Moonsift that I actually saw evidence that Google removed their extension from the Chrome Web Store proactively while they were doing an assessment, probably because they know that they got the OAuth phishing email, and it took a couple days to get that extension back available. There's like a Reddit thread I found of users talking about this, right? And so, yeah, it was kind of split across, this campaign. And what I end up being a little disappointed about is like, obviously Google noticed that to some extent. I was able to quickly come up with a signature that detects a lot of these things, and you have to imagine that they have the same capability. Like, these patterns are not mind-blowing or super it's just text matching. And so how does that work in the background, and like what's the transparency process there to where one of these extensions can get pulled proactively but many others don't?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but a big takeaway for companies is that the attack surface of the company is now every employee that has a cookie in a web browser, any extension they load that has access to the website information, like ad blockers classically get read and write everything on all web pages ever. So every extension from every one of your employees with their own browser is now part of the attack surface of the organization, whether it's the changing hands, or it could just be right out, hey, Eric, you have a great extension. Wouldn't you like $100,000 buyout right now?
Yeah.
That's a way to get a lot of places. Like, effectively, extensions can also be info stealers.
See, and I think that it's an illusion that you can easily solve this problem by just, enforcing extensions at the enterprise managed browser level, because unless you're doing like full beyond corp style, like device level management, you can't stop me from logging in with my own browser. I can log into company resources with whatever browser I want. And so it's a really tough problem to solve, and a really expensive one. And it gets even worse when you think about it like this. The solutions to all these problems require software like the Cyberhaven extension or like some endpoint agent, which again, it's a recursive issue of, think about this. And this is probably like the less critical piece of this whole incident, but it's still there. The Cyberhaven extension was a security tool that organizations were relying on to prevent data loss, right? Through people uploading corporate sensitive data or whatever to ChatGPT or whatever. So for the duration of time that extension was compromised and it was pulled from the web store, which it absolutely should have been, the companies that were relying on and paying for that protection weren't getting it. So now you've got new risks and new exposures that spun out indirectly. Like the ripples just go on for days.
What's also really fascinating to me is I found a sample from May of this same Cyberhaven behavior, and that one uses like web request listeners instead of grabbing cookies, or like there's just a behavior change in the extension, but you can kind of tell that it is only there because of the permissions that the existing extension already requested and had approved by the user. If you add a new permission to like grab all cookies, it's gonna disable the extension, it's gonna flag, it's gonna cause some notification. But it seems like the attacker noticed and was targeting specific extensions that already had, say, and Cyberhaven already has cookies allowed, pushed out in mass by the organizations. So yeah, of course, like that's a great target to go after. And for the number of targets, probably it was around 46 or so that I saw like registered domains for. I haven't really come up with this exact number, but it ended up being about 20. So like a 50% hit rate or so. Pretty crazy.
That's nuts. And the other, like now my brain starts to go towards like, what types of profiling would you do to identify a list of extensions that you'd want to target? So like, we know this adversary had certain domains and whatnot registered ahead of time, but if you think about the reconnaissance behind like, okay, I'm going to try to insert myself into like, okay, so supply chain attack, I'm going to insert myself into the extension release process here. I've got malicious code teed up, ready to go. How do you, and obviously, hopefully no one here can answer this question from a professional sense, but maybe from a hypothetical sense, but like going around and then targeting them, right? And thinking about like what types of permissions you would need to make this successful. Do you code with those permissions in mind, or do you code an exploit like this, or do you code maliciously asking for more extensions, right? I feel like there's a whole world of like, how do you build a malicious browser extension and insert it into the process with the speed that was done in this case, right? Because as we talked about in the very beginning, this wasn't like, oh, dude, our fish worked, let's go write something. It was, we're locked and loaded, we got the OAuth, push it, boom, we're in, and it's Christmas, right? And I think that's maybe another part where we need some, I don't want to say assistance from Google, implying we've already received some, but that might be like understanding that process, kind of the way we'd understand like malware authoring and whatnot, as what it takes to get to a place of malicious Chrome extension development.
I think it's the cost of doing business. I think if you want to have a browser monopoly, this is a cost of doing business. And I think that they should step up their game there. Because John, to your point, yeah, great. They had the wherewithal to pull this extension, even sort of preemptively, right? Just while they figured it out. But to your point, there are signatures in that. So if you're even suspicious that that thing is popped and you can quickly produce some signatures, I think you should be sweeping the rest of the store for other impacted extensions, not just taking this one down, right? You should be protecting your users, especially when so many of your users are enterprises, right? Google Chrome Enterprise is a product, right? So
and like even two days after Cyberhaven put out a technical notice, not just their initial assessment, there were 3 more extensions compromised added to the web store. So like there was even public notice about it, you know?
So essentially, Google is playing whack-a-mole. They're very reactionary about this instead of being more proactive, which if anyone has the smarts and the resources to do this right, you would think it'd be Google. Well, folks, hey, time is flying by today. This is a really good conversation. Had a lot of fun on this one. Folks, definitely take an opportunity to check those links in the chat thread if you want to read more about this. We'll also proxy them over to our Slack, slack.limacharlie.io. Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, Matt. And John, thanks for being the guest appearance. And so good to see all you guys again back after the holidays. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Have a great rest of your day, folks.